I think we'll start. We're on time. We'll start now e homa. E tika ana kia hihiri a ke tātou, mā te karakia tātou, e arata ki a tātou I te rangi nei. Mana wa mai e te rangi he tū nei. Mana wa mai e te papairaro nei. Mana wa mai e ngā mākuru a te rangi o te whenua. Tō manawa, ko tōku manawa ka whakairi a ke kirunga kia tēnā. Haumi e, hui e, tai ki e. Nau mai, whakatata mai, whakarongo, taringa are mai, I tēnei ata kōpeke, ko puanga ki te rangi, tāria ki runga ko matariki. Heri kai, matariki kai ngā hokia, nōku I roto I te tai tokerau, ki kai taia, a peka atu, ki ngā iwi o te motu, ko tāmaki herenga waka, ko tāmaki herenga tangata, e here nei a tātou I te rangi nei. Tēnā koutou e rarau mai nei, e rere ana ngā au o mihi ki runga I a koutou katoa. Welcome once, welcome twice, welcome 3 times, no mai. I just wanted to acknowledge everyone that's made their times and efforts this morning to our platform. Wanted to acknowledge the awesome presentation that we have this morning, or the kōrero that we have to share with you all. Kōrere whiti mō te tōku ingoa. My name is Elizabeth, or Riri. I'll be your host today on behalf of Practice Foundation to provide a space for those working in the public sector who are working in a complex environments to come together with other like-minded people. So I acknowledge that this is a difficult time for many people, and we would like to acknowledge, encourage and support everyone to take good care of themselves and each other as much as they can. We hope you find coming together for today's session epic, and we also have a few of our hāpai o in the background. You may or you may not see them matanei, face to face, but I wanted to acknowledge our the newest member, Kelly Mung, which is our hāpai o that does a lot of the background mahi. Nau mai Kelly, ki tēnei papahotanga o tātou. E mihi ana ki a koe, Kelly. Also, we have Penny Hagen and Lee from the lab. So if you see them on site, don't forget to big wave or acknowledge their presence here today on behalf of the lab. E mihi ana ki a koutou, e mihi ana ki a koutou, tēnā koutou katoa. Our rhythm of the day today is a goodie one. Ko te reo Māori te kākahu o te whakaaro, te huarahi ki te ao tūroa. E ai ki tā he mi henare. We have our kaupapa, which is set with the presence of Frances Goulton. Te reo matatene, kia pakari te ako, kia rere te reo, kia Māori te reo, kia tika te reo, recognises and embraces the multiple forms of communication and evidence. It challenges the tendency of Western systems that give legitimacy only to the written word. Today's session is an important reminder that what constitutes evidence is also reinforces the importance of hearing people in ways that are meaningful to them. And so we'll have Whai Goulton, Whai Frances, that will share that kōrero, beautiful kōrero with us all here today. What is our session looking like this morning? So on this cold day, even though it's raining here up in Kaitaia, we've got whakawhanaungatanga that'll happen for the next 90 minutes. And then from there, we'll hear Whai Frances and Sophia. And then if we have time pending, we'll be able to pose some questions according to the kōrero that we heard this morning. So no mai whakatata mai. So get warm, make sure you got your cup of tea. What we're going to do now is we're going to get into some whakawhanaunga with each other, and we're going to go into a breakout room. And so in that breakout room, we will pose a question for everyone to ponder on and think about. And the questions that we have, the first question that we have, is I'm going to ask you all to introduce yourself, however that might be. And then the question is, everyone has a story. Select and share a symbol that represents how you came to work in the public sector. Kapai? Again, everyone has a story. Select and share a symbol that represents how you came to work and the public sector. So we're now going to put you into your breakout rooms. We have Lee and Kelly that will separate everyone into their breakout rooms. Enjoy and don't be shy. Patua te whakamai homa. No mai hoki mai e homa. No mai hoki mai. Welcome back. Ko te mana konoi i whakawhanau ngā koutou kia koutou wano. I hono tahi atu koutou kia koutou. Here's hoping that everyone had a wonderful chance to meet everyone in your breakout groups and you had the opportunity to share what you needed to share. Please feel free though to drop some of your thoughts and what you heard in your group in the chat if you feel that there was some good kōrero. Jot it down in the chat forum for us all to have a read. So, hoki mai koutou katoa, ki tēnei pāpāhotanga o tātou, welcome back. What we'll now do is, I'm going to introduce, so we have Frances Goulton, heuri no Ngāti Māmoe, no Whangaroa pū, he taituara ia mo tana kaupapa Aronui Limited, he kairanga hau. Sophia Frances is the director of her company Aronui Limited, a research and innovative solutions development company offering expertise in education, social science, research with Indigenous populations and Indigenous knowledge, creativity and lift. So e mihi ana ki a koe Sophia Frances, tēnei te mihi ki a koe ka hoa te tarako kōrero ki a koe me o kaupapa katoa. Tēnā koe Sophia Frances.
Hoe no rā mihi aki ana au ki a koutou. Nā kanohi puta mai I o koutou whare, nei rā te mihi, tēnā koutou, o tira tēnā tātou katoa I tēnei ata, I tēnei wā kōrero, tēnā tātou. Frances Goulton tōku ingoa, he uri a hau no ngā puhi nui tonu, no Ngāti Kahu me Ngāti Hine, nei rā te mihi ki a koutou. Ai, koena?
Tēnā koe whai. Ka huri aki te rākau kōrero ki a koe Sophia Beaton, he uri tēnei no roto o kai Tahu Kati Māmoe, Practice and Development Lead at Healthy Families. So those that have been in the Healthy Families kaupapa, you may know Sophia. 10 years plus experience of design project lead and community development practitioner in government. Ka hoa te rākau kōrero ki a koe e Sophia. Tēnā koe. E te tuakana.
Tēnā koe riri. Kia ora koutou katoa, ko Waio, ko Sophia Beaton tōku ikoa, no kai Tahu me Kati Māmoe ahau. And as Riri said, I work for Healthy Families, whānau. And it is my absolute honour and privilege to be able to have this opportunity to support this conversation with Sophia Frances this morning with you all. And I guess the kind of impetus for this conversation and for Sophia Frances joining us all in Practice Foundations started with the Mihi that Riri and I are a part of. So our Healthy Families Far North team is nested inside of Te Runanga o Whangaroa. And we were lucky enough to be part of a 2-day wānanga with Sophia Frances around storytelling and around how we can tell our own individual stories as well as our collective stories for our runanga and for our people. And so it felt like a really wonderful opportunity to bring Sophia Frances into this space. And so just mihi to you, Sophia, for agreeing. And really excited to hear your kōrero today. So I've just started screen sharing. I'll put this on slideshow. But one of the questions that is kind of the initial question is the heading for this kaupapa, the needle, the thread and the paraikete is a really interesting one. And I know that you've been in a haerenga with this, and I would love for you to take us on that haerenga for the beginnings of this journey for you and where it has taken you. And I'll drive your slideshow, so you just let me know when you want to haere tonu. Ka pai, kia ora whaia. You're on mute, whaia.
Tēnā nō ki tātou. Look, I'm just going to start off with this little more tiatia, because I do want to talk about the Te Reo Matatini in its fullest form. It relates to the range of forms that we use to communicate with. So I'm going to start with this little more tiatia. More tiatia is probably one of the most ancient of forms, and it's probably across the world, across all cultures. But it certainly is has an important place in ours. So it's just one of the, I'm just going to waiata for you. And it actually talks about the paraikete, and was written when at the opening of the reopening of our whare in Ngāti Ruamāhue in Wainui. And it talks about the paraikete and talks about 100 years. About looking back 100 years, looking forward 100 years, and then what it means to be whānau and hapū in a thriving, in a world that is thriving because of what we've done today and what our past has been also. So taking the good forward. So this is just one small slice of that. Ko tahiro tau haere atu haere mai rā. Ko tahi te uru, ko tahi te mira, te ko tui tui tanga, ho taku hiwi, ho taku whare, ka ora hei. Marira tēnā koutou. So telling our story is an important feature of who we are as human beings, as you will all know, and hopefully you got the opportunity to talk about a symbol or that might represent why you're in the working environment that you're in at the moment, as I understand public servants. So the story that I'm going to tell you about is the story of the needle, the thread, and the paraikete, and it's actually a story that's related to the Waitangi Tribunal and their visit to Te Tai Tokerau, as the tribunal were seeking stories from our people. And I had also just I was born in Hastings, schooled in Green Meadows, Napier, and then went off to Teachers College in Palmerston North, Te Papaioia, Manawatu, and lived there for a number of years. And as a 50-something-year-old lady, returned home, never had been home. And so I came home at a time when the Waitangi Tribunal were collecting stories about about where we find ourselves today as being part of the tangata whenua. So I recognised coming home, when you return home and you don't really know your people, and certainly they don't know you, there's lots to learn. And so this is a little bit about the story of my journey of coming home and recognising that there must be other ways to tell this story to the Waitangi Tribunal, because it's just pages and pages and pages of story on the written form. So it made me wonder about sitting there, and the very first time I listened, and I didn't participate, I listened and thought there must be another way. It also felt very hugely male-dominated in the process and just everything. So I thought, well, we need something else to for the tribunal to hear our voices. So the idea came up, and I was with Kura Te Waru Rewiri, that we would put some artwork together. And then we said, what about the blanket? What about the blanket? And of course, it was really touchstone, really, because during the signing of the tiriti, our tupuna were given 2 blankets in recognition of signing the treaty. So we thought, well, perfect. So we used the blankets as a metaphor, one, to think about sewing ourselves back together. And we also, so we collected a whole lot of blankets, old blankets, and they came in, grabbed some needle and thread, and we started patching up whilst we were giving evidence, and also whilst we were hearing other people's evidence. And it was kind of like one of those moments in time where you're filled with emotion. There's anger that comes out with what happened to some people. There's joy that finally we get to tell the story, but it's a highly emotionally charged time to be listening to your people tell their stories. And so for us, the wahine, we sat and we stitched our stories, and those stories we have, during that time, we created about 25 blankets, paraikete. And this blanket in front of you that you've got on your screen was the very first paraikete we put together. So I'll just do as we sat there, we just, we had a table there with needles, threads, and these patches that we chopped up. And it was really interesting because I found a lot of friends. I made a lot of friends with people who hadn't touched a needle or a thread for many years, or they had stories of their mothers or grandmothers. And those kind of stories came into it. So this one here, you've got 58 up here. 58 is you needed to have a Y claim before you could present any evidence before the Waitangi Tribunal. So 58 was the general Y claim for Whangaroa. So I'm Whangaroa, very Whangaroa-centric. You'll probably hear that throughout my kōrero. And so that's why we've got Y there. Those are your Y numbers that you needed to have. This little patch here at the top, I hope you can see my little arrow. Can you see my arrow? Oh, I can. Okay, so you'll see there's a 15, and in the middle of the blanket at the top, there's a just pop down there. Yes, that's the cairns. If you're ever driving through Kaioi and you look to the left across the river there's a cairns, which is a stone structure, and at the top of that stone structure is a cross. Now, that little piece of that block of land was the first piece of land that was sold in Whangaroa in 1823. And it was sold 50 acres, which was sold for 15, which is, you'll see the 15 there on screen, 15 red axes, 3 red capes and 2 red blankets on the side there. So that was the first transaction, because the Waitangi Tribunal was a lot to do with whenua, the loss of whenua. And then, of course, people were sitting there saying they wanted compensation, not settlement, and the other side of the story was not for sale. Tahirua Toriwha represents the 3. Most of us know there were 3 articles to Te Tiriti, and then there was also a lesson on the 4th one. So this is the very first blankets that came through on a really, it's full of holes, but I guess for most of us also that those blankets, I don't know, there's probably a few of you on here that have never seen a grey blanket, but certainly in my days, I was probably the last of the generation where the grey blanket with the red thing up the middle, those were the blankets that kept us warm, not the beautiful light duvets we have today. So that was the beginning of the blanket story for us as wahine, as we stitched some of our stories on here. And in between, the next blanket I've got is the last blanket we did during the Waitangi Tribunal hearings. And I chose this one because there's a number of things that people possibly don't understand, and that there are perhaps some confusions about flags, and the importance of flags. And I guess just recently in some of the protests, we've we've seen the flag waving. But I just wanted to, this one here was really about what, during the process of the hearings, Ngāpuhi were asked to consider getting into smaller groups and settle the Waitangi tribe and to settle our claims against the Crown. Now, what was a really interesting, so there were in the Ngāpuhi, if I can go through the middle flags, the little ones, that line, the second line, if you could just point those out. Those, there are 6 of them. I better check, are there 6 of them there? Yes, there were 6 of them there, and those 6 represent the 6 tai whenua of the Ngāpuhi claims. And they're all different sizes, different shapes. They all had different, different people there, same people. And so they represented the voice of Ngāpuhi in this giant claim that we had. And our giant claim really for Ngāpuhi, I'm going to go up to the first, you'll see that there are a number of flags here. They're just representations of the flags. They're not the flags themselves. That's why we took the symbols. And the first on the top left-hand corner, which I guess most of you will know, or some of you might not know, that this is the He Whakaputanga. It was the first flag to fly that was chosen by some rangatira in the north here, that would be out of 4 flags that we chose that flag to represent He Whakaputanga, Te Wakamenenga, and the things that were on that, which is ko mātou ko Ngā Tino Rangatira. So that was the very first flag that was recognised by Māori, that would be our recognised flag, and was also the one that would let King George know that we're an independent nation, and these are all the things that we believe in. You should too. Over here we have the red crown, which was upside down because they came from the other side of the world. So it was all full, you'll hear that it's full of symbolism, and which is why we want to tell a big story in just a really quick, in a quick way. The top right-hand flag was the white ensign, which was used at the time. It was flying at the time of the signing of the Treaty of Te Tiriti. So it was, can't remember whether it was on the table, but it was certainly flying at the time. These little flags here, as I said before, represented the 6 takiwā, or the 6 areas of the Ngāpuhi claims. But also in here, I have, in designing this particular blanket, I designed the other blanket, others added their patches to it. But I was thinking about if we were to settle that, the framework perhaps would be similar across the 6 areas, but we would also recognise, we might have different sizes, we might have different colours, we might have different shades. So that's why they're in different sizes, they're not in different shapes, they're just in different colours, for example. Then smack bang in the middle, of course, there we have Ngāpuhi, the largest iwi in the country. and then on the left-hand side, we have the Tino Rangatira flag, which is the newest of all of the flags, created in the 1990s. And that flag you will see most commonly used by the country, by Māori, although you will probably see in the north that you'll see that He Whakaputanga is probably the flag, the haki, or the kara that we use representing our voice, which goes back to 1835. And then, of course, in the bottom right-hand side, looking a little bit tatty actually, is the New Zealand flag. So we've got that too. And essentially for Māori, many of us sit under those flags. Many of us sit under those flags, and at time there'll be times when one flag becomes more important than the other. So it's not, some people may be confused about it, but it's really just about at the time where you're at and what do you think is leading you in that particular space and time. And then right in the middle, this blanket was begun and completed at the time when Jacinda was Prime Minister when she came in, and so we said this is a little envelope, and on the little envelope we had he waka putanga te karav on it, but we also had this little wee leaf, because one of the key things for us is to look after our whenua as Māori, as tangata whenua, and we know we're not alone in that, is that the symbols of our life come from our environment. And so it kind of reminded us, which we were reminding her too, that yes, we're tangata whenua, but also we live on a whenua that needs protecting from human beings. And so there's a lot of kōrero tied up in this particular paraikete, which was the kind of also symbolized the closing of the evidence that was placed before the tribunal. Also, when the tribunal completed their, I think they were up here for a number of years, but when they finished up here at the Crown closings in Paihia, Whangaroa woman made a red paraikete for each of the tribunal members, because we knew that they needed to go away and deliberate on what they had heard, all the evidence, and pull it together. Amazing people that they are, with that kind of skill set to take on board what we were saying and then to return it to us, which recently, last December, that report was officially handed over to us, which was the stage 2 report. So we gave each of the tribunal members a red paraikete, and we put our own symbols on it, because the paraikete were our ways of telling your story, of telling a story, and we're in the process at the moment of writing that story. Going to use the written form now, because if we're on a political march, or if we go anywhere, actually, you may see some of our women of Te Taitokero wearing a red blanket. And I'm really pleased to say that there are a number of runanga members, staff members, who are proudly walking around with a red paraikete, and some of them joined us the other day at the march in the middle of Kaio. So yeah, they hold a lot of value. They talk without us having to say too much as well. That's really, I think, has been the strength of using symbols.
Wondering if I could just jump in there, Pai, and Kati Pai, I love the rich kōrero around the symbols, and it's really epic to hear about the wahine who were part of the process of creating these beautiful paraikete, and I'm really curious to know what the impact of that has been for those wahine who were part of the creation of these stories, and to be able to put them through a kind of a formal government judicial process, to have them be seen as part of that storytelling. And I'm really curious to hear more about that.
Yeah, I think for many of us, it gives us a voice without having to say anything. And I think that's probably not all of us feel confident to articulate how we're feeling or thinking. And indeed, I know I've seen that with a lot of the women that have been around, that their hands and their hearts can tell the story without their mouths having to open. And I think that's probably been the greatest advantage that I've seen when we have come together, and more people, come out, and it's kind of like that solidarity. It's like a solidarity movement of red blankets and having one on your shoulders. Yeah,
literally fire.
Yeah, this is probably a good time. Oh, yeah, sorry, Sophia.
I've just got one final pārtai, but the way that you were introducing those paraikete was almost like a form of resistance, right? So you weren't invited into that process. So I'm really curious about how the public sector, if you've got any thoughts on this, how they be better at inviting people into a process like that, where they can tell their stories in these ways that aren't just having to write a formal submission through a government process or whatever that might be.
Oh, that's an interesting question. Can you imagine the public sector walking around with blankets on their shoulders with their own...
I'm here for it.
You know, logos, people have logos, you know, but yeah, I guess I did think about, you know, what benefits for the public sector could there be in terms of thinking about your own mahi and what you might do to actually have a voice without having to say too much, if you like. And obviously Toi does that, or the art does that. And I mean, that's probably one of the reasons why I agreed to run the 2-day workshop with the Runanga. So because it gave me an opportunity to talk to people in a sort of a safe way about some really important things, because I remember that day and I thought, oh, I'm going to do this because I want to talk to the people who work with my people. And so that was about, so I'm rocking up there with my patches and my needles, and we're all cutting, and you're all sitting there stitching while I can talk to you about the meaning of, and we did remember, if you remember, we started off with stitching the kara, or the Whakaputanga flag, and it gave you a chance to just, you know, step away from your jobs and just to concentrate on getting that needle going in and out, and that in itself, having a calm kind of thing without having 100 PowerPoint slides talking about something, but actually sometimes it's a good idea to step away from all that stuff in our heads and do something with our hands, because ultimately your heart comes into it. And even because I would laugh, you know, people say I can't stitch or I'm not very good, but no matter what the wonkiness of the stitch, it's still a stitch and it still holds things together. And I think sometimes in this space I have seen the bigness of the whakaaro in the smallness as well. So it's kind of like an open way of, and that's one of the reasons why I carried on with this, was to actually find a space for people to talk about things that they needed to talk about to get things off their chest. And stitching was just a really, really great way of doing it, because what we did is we had all these smaller patches, and then before the tribunal at every sitting, we had 3 years of sittings, we would get all the little patches together and sew them together, so there'd be 4 of us sitting knee to knee patching and talking about the week that had just gone. And so at the last hakari, or at the last meal, we would reveal our story to the tribunal. So it became a paraikete kōrero session at the end of every week. And, you know, I mean, the other part was we wanted to be recognised as, and we knew that we had to do something that was loud and proud, but didn't necessarily have to say anything. So yeah, they have done that.
That's beautiful, Fire.
Tēnā koe. Tēnā kaurua. I think we'll give an opportunity now, and thank you very much for that rich kōrero, Whai Frances. We're going to give everyone an opportunity now to share in a breakout group just for 10 minutes. We have a few pātai that will be in the chat, but the 3 pātai that we want to ask everyone is, what stood out from that conversation for you? 1, how does the storytelling show up in your mahi? 2, and what could you do differently or more of to support whānau and communities to share their stories? Those are the 3 pātai that'll go into your into the chat forum, and you'll all now go out into your breakout groups for you to share. Hoki mai te whānau. For those that have been in amongst it, sharing kōrero, if you have any pātai, or if you'd like to share back, can I get some volunteers before I pick on somebody? And it'll be the ones that I know that I'll pick on. So anyone, mā te ngākau hihiko, voluntary, put your hand up. Yep, okay, well, I'm going to ask Mike Tipene, someone from Yoropu, you know it. I'm going to ask you what came out of your conversation as the ropu. You want to unmute yourself, Ewa?
Hapai, kia ora tātou. O tōtahi ake mihi atu ana kia koe riri. O tira koutou te hunga o te whānau o Healthy Families whānau te mihi atu ana ki a koutou I whakaritea ki tēnei o ngā hui. O tira ki a koutou katoa, ka tai mai a I purangi nei mihi atu ana kia tātou mai I te uru o tāmaki mihi atu ana. So yeah, amongst our group, we sort of spoke about a few things, particularly about the power of that kōrero and I suppose just the different way of telling a story really that none of us had really ever thought about and how we might also use that within our own mahi. We spoke about here in Healthy Families, we have a communications team and really spoke about how can we sort of change it up a little bit? How can we start to maybe look at more Indigenous ways of telling stories? We also spoke about Ruta, our Pacific Systems innovator, shared another method which is called Te Vaivai, which is a very similar process that our Pacific brothers and sisters use to weave blankets and garments as such, and which is very similar to what we are, the paraikete. We also had a conversation about how do we invest more into innovative storytelling? How do we resource that to go and learn, to go and explore different ways of telling those stories? I also had a thought about when we're collecting insights or evidence and just trying to engage with our communities around what are some of the issues, the topical issues. Sometimes they're telling us and we're just not receiving it because we're not looking at the ways they're telling us. We're not, we hear it through submission, we hear it through interview, but sometimes we're not looking at art. We're not looking at haka, mōteatea. We're not unpacking those things. So yeah, that was some of our thoughts. Kia ora.
Tēnā koe. Has anyone got any pātai that would like to be shared or asked of by Frances? Any pātai? Whilst we have this time with fire. If not, we can go into the last slide of Fire Frances. Anyone?
And I'm keen to hear some more from the different rōpū, because what Mike was sharing, I feel really closely aligns to what Fire Frances was talking about. And I'm keen to hear from others, maybe not in Healthy Families, because we're taking over this place, it seems. But is there others from a different rōpū that would be keen to share?
I think there was Kate. I think, Kate, you would love hearting some of the kōrero that Fire Frances was talking about. If you want to share your whakaro, Kate.
Kia ora, tātou. Yeah, really beautiful kōrero this morning, Fire. I particularly, in our breakout group, we talked about, the power of, I wrote, stepping away from all the stuff in our heads and doing something with our hands, and the power of doing something with our hands to settle, to stop and just slow things down, and to, I think there's a kind of lovely ability to play or, lean into processing with others. And for me, it was just a lovely way to see how that came together in a medium that, had such strong connection to, that was a really powerful symbol, the connection to the tipuna and, right back to tiriti, was just really lovely. So I think we talked about how that really, that was really a lovely way for that to come together.
Tēnā koe, Kate. E mihi ana. Have you got any others, Kate? No? Unless we can...
Pātai, from me, I'm quite interested, talked about how you came together and stitched as a group. What about, were there, I guess, was that a way that the rangatahi could be involved as well and hear some of those stories and experiences that, the older, people who have gone through that process, was that a way of sharing or?
By Frances, unmute.
So when we did, I didn't add that after the hearing spaces, I came back to Whangaroa. Well, we were in Whangaroa and went to a school, went to one of the small kura here, and the kids created 5 blankets. So we sat in classrooms because we knew that to give over this to the next generation, because that's a really, really important. That's not just an old fogies piece of work that and actually sitting with kids, and interesting thing, you know, big boys sitting on the floor with big boys and needles, they were probably better than the girls. So yes, we've already started to you know, to work with kids to say, look, you're part of this as well, you're part of the thread. So yes, and look, it's just a matter of leaving patches and needles and wool around in certain places. So they are involved in it.
Thank you, because I think that's just so important that those stories, you know, continue, and you know, that's another way of just that communicating that, you know, the rangatahi can understand and take those stories as well.
Yeah, thank you.
Kia ora. Tēnā koe. Is anyone else? Amber, would you like to share? Amber Walls? Anything from you? No?
One of the questions, sorry, back to me again. One of the questions that's kind of floating around in my head is that it feels like you need a certain kind of literacy in order to hear the stories. And I don't know if it's a question that you can answer, Fire, but maybe there's some capability building needed inside of our system and our public sector to raise our level of literacy to be able to hear these different ways. Yeah. And I saw Amber's got her hand up now. So sorry, Amber.
Sorry. Yeah, I was off screen. I was trying to find something actually. Frances, that just reminded me of the Teaspoon of Light Theatre project. I don't know if you know about that. Quite during following the Christchurch earthquake, the second one, there was this really beautiful project by a couple of people at Auckland University, theatre practitioners, went and worked with children in Christchurch, and they made these blankets to keep families and their friends safe. And it's a really beautiful project, but it really plays on that idea of really collaboratively making things, to process ideas, to come up with kind of solutions that feel like you've got some sort of control over what's happening, and you can imagine different possibilities through this kind of making process. It's really beautiful. I gushed in our group. I was in Kate's group actually. She sort of said that we talk lots about this idea of creating spaces, making spaces, collaborative spaces to kind of really unlock stories, you know, and use materials and kind of like really aesthetic experiences, I suppose. My background's in the arts, participatory arts, so it's just, this speaks to me sort of massively, actually. And I think there's so much potential for us to use creative media much more in situations like this. I've been involved in so many projects where people have really struggled to talk about their experiences or deal with really challenging sort of issues, but you know, manage to make their way through those stories and communicate them really amazingly through the arts. So that's just a gush. But yeah, I'll find the link and I'll put it in the chat. Let me just go off and find it.
Thank you.
Tēnā koe. I think, David, would you like to share more on your little droplet of kōrero in our chat? David? Right. David Oxenbridge.
He's just saying his mic isn't working in the chat.
Oh, okay.
Ready?
Ka pai. Pai ana. Ka pai. O mihi ana kia koutou katoa. Has anyone else got any other pātai? Any pātai, any questions that you'd like to ask or like to share more? What resonates from what you've heard this morning? No? Hayley, would you like to share anything? Hayley Pritchard? No? Ka pai, pata te pukumā.
I think most of what I was thinking has already been shared. I just some of the conversation we had was just like what a what a beautiful way to communicate, just like everyone else is saying. But for me particularly, I loved how the paraikete was given to the tribunal, and what a cool and generous way of sharing that kōrero as well. I think that would have been a really powerful moment. So yeah, thank you for sharing the story. It was beautiful to hear.
Sophia?
I was just going to say we missed out on a final slide from Whaia Frances, and if there's no more kōrero, then maybe Whaia could talk to that final slide.
Ka pai, tukua.
And Maria's talking about the New Zealand AIDS Memorial Quilt, yeah, which is a really epic piece of mahi from the community, isn't it?
Kia kiri te wāwha.
Tēnā koe. This last one, and I'm actually wearing it at the moment. This image that you have here was on February the 5th, and this is when the kāwanatanga of the government came to Paihia the day before Waitangi Day. And for Ngāpuhi, it's not Waitangi Day, it's Waitangi month, because there's a lot of work that goes on before that day actually eventuates. And actually, just where I'm sitting at the moment looking at that photo, is where David Seymour, the Prime Minister, Winston and Shane were sitting. So we're at this image here. It's got, on this particular blanket, it's got tangata tiriti and tangata whenua, because at the end of the day, if we are going to live together, we totally believe in te tiriti. And so that blanket, which I quite often will wear, is just symbols of that. But you'll see we're singing a mōtiatia here, and the mōtiatia that we're singing is about a red blanket, and it's talking about Marsden. In this mōtiatia, it's about when Marsden went to Rangihaua, to Oihi, and it was his first, not communion, there's a first church service held. And so this particular mōtiatia that we're singing is talking about when Marsden was asking us to join the church and to look up to the sky, because that's where God resides. And this is what's in this mōtiatia that was written 100 years later in 1940 in commemoration of the 100 years. And that's the mōtiatia we're singing. And in that mōtiatia, it has a line that says, it talks about the paraikete whero, which was a sign of the loss of land, the loss of whenua. So that particular image is dripping with metaphor, and so that's why I thought I would, to further reinforce the power of images in this case, but also the story behind it, sitting in front of the Waitangi house, which is a whare that belongs to all of Aotearoa. And it was built in commemoration of the 100th year of the signing of Te Tiriti o Waitangi, and that's what we were doing this year. So, which is why we sung this, and why this blanket came out. So yeah, that's where I thought I would finish my my kōrero. It's been a privilege to talk about this. Thank you for the comments and the feedback. Because I know in all of us there is an artist in all of us, somewhere in all of us. It's a bit further for some than others, but certainly, I'm, as an educationalist, I believe that there are more ways to understand the world than just reading and writing, although that is my specialty in Māori medium, is te reo Māori and tuhi in particular. But I recognise that you don't get to write if you don't have a story to tell. And so therefore, to get to writing that, sometimes you need a number of ways to be able to understand that what you've got to say is is valid. And yeah, that's as teachers, I think our role is to bring those stories out. But I guess just thinking about some of the roles you have in your workspaces that, and I noted someone talked about decolonising, measuring success. And indeed that is, you know, I work sometimes directly contract with Ministry of Education, and we have these milestone reports which really don't go in any way to telling the full story of why we want to do it this way, why it looks like that, for example. So yeah, I'm very grateful and feel privileged to be on this platform this morning and acknowledge all of you taking some time out from your work. And thank you very much to the team that asked me to talk. Very, very grateful for the opportunity. Mō taku iwi te take, mō taku a pōpō te take, mō aku mokopuna te take. Mauri ora ki a koutou katoa.
Tēnā koe, tēnā koe. Has anyone got any pātai, anything that they'd like to share? Any others? No? Take it once, take it twice. Ka pai. Well, kamutu pēr I ko nā wai kōrero. Mā waira e taurima, mā ku e taurima, mō ake, e whai ko wau kōrero, ko tia ki te ngākau, o tēnā, whakapuru tōnu, kia mau, kia ita. Tuatahi me mihi kātika ki tō tātou whaia. Pai Frances. Kāre moho he hataku ia, e pēnei ana, ko ngā roi mata, e kore mō mātou tupuna. O tātou whainga, kōrero ki tua, kōrero ki te pō. E rangi, e tika ana kia mihi au ki a koe, nā taku karangātu ki a koe, nā taku pōhiri atu ki a koe, e tahau mai ki roto i a mātou. Ki te hono, ki te whakahoahoa I o kōrero, I o mātauranga, hei kōrero tuku iho mo mātou ngā taringa e are mai ana. Anō reira, e whai, e mihi ana, koenei roi mata mo o tupuna, mo tō iwi, mo tō ake, ko o tamariki, ko o mokopuna, ko ngā uri whakaheke, e roi mata. Anō reira, e mihi kātika ana ki a koe, ki tō kaupapa, e kaha poi ana I roto I a mātou, te iwi Māori, tangata tiriti mai, tangata whenua mai, tangata iwi take mai, tēnei e mihi ana ki a koe, tēnā koe. Huri noa, ki a koe e te tuakana e Sophia, nāku ahau, nāku koe I karanga, kia āwhena ki tēnei wāhi o tātou, e tika ana kia mihi. But yeah, I'm not going to apologize for these tears, but these tears I say for those that have gone beyond, that are now stars in the sky. But I just wanted to pay homage to the mahi that Whaia Frances continually does in our community, not only for her whānau, but for her tribe, for her for iwi Māori and tangata tiriti, for Aotearoa really. And so once again, I just wanted to acknowledge everyone that has given their time this morning to share, to listen, and acknowledge everyone's time here today. Thank you very much. We've got a few pānui here, so we've got video and resources available on the website shortly. We'll have Lee or Kelly that will add those for everyone to have a look and share that. But once again, thank you very much to our hapai, all those that have been doing mahi in the background and leading into each of these sessions. But thank you very much. Penny, Kelly, and Lee. E mihi ana kia koutou katoa. Hey, whakakapi I mua tonu I tā tātou karakia. Before we karakia, we'll just have a whakatau tinana, hākina, which is to inhale and exhale, hāputa. Hākina, hāputa, hākina, hāputa. Hākina, want everyone to have a think about. Just close your eyes and have a think about all the kōrero that we've shared. Hāputa. Hākina. Hāputa. Ko te pito. Ko te tū tamawahine. Ko te tū tamatāne. Ko te pito. A ngātu ki ngā tupuna. Hei oranga hinengaro. Hei oranga wairua. Hei oranga tinana. Hei oranga whānau. Ko te pito. Hākina. Inhale. Hāputa. Hākina. Hāputa. Kia hihiri ake tātou. We'll now do a closing prayer to close off our session. Anuhia, anuhia. Anuhia ko te uru tapu nei. Kia whakairihia te tapu kia wā te ai te ara. Kia turu ki whakatahai, kia tura ki whakatahai. Whāno, whāno, hara mai te toke. Haumi e, hui e, tāi ki e. Tēnā koutou.
Nā
Enjoy
koutou.
the rest of your day. Kia ora
Tēnā.
rā tātou.